Bailey, Midkiff, WIC.
Jake Milne, WIC.
Outstanding. The levels look great, and I appreciate you both joining us today. And I wanted to get right into the meat of it right away because it is something I think it's going to be an ongoing topic. I wanted to be on the forefront of it. Wanted to bring you guys in to talk a little bit about the radioactive cover story on Rolling Stone. And, of course, that means it's going to hit the youth, and it's going to create a whole new conversation about energy. And just based on those keywords alone, do you too know what I'm talking about? And what kind of comments are we in for today?
I mean, we always enjoy the comments, Jason, but I mean, that kind of puts it on a weird thing. And actually, the first thing that comes to my mind, Jake and I were actually having some dinner last night, the regular hamburger chat, and we discussed how on December 23rd, I think it was a Monday, there was an article brought up that Pavilion, Wyoming was a big discussion for some time. It's actually been an ongoing investigation until they finally closed it that day about fracking and contaminated water. It's pretty interesting to find out that this investigation started in 2008 and had a lot of various topics that came with it. But they concluded that it was not contaminated because of fracking, which was quite an interesting thing to talk about because it's always something that's brought up, right?
Well, to me, the word radioactive oil and gas wastewater is going to be used in all kinds of signs. It's it's going to be played on, and that seems to be the thrust and the bulk, or the core, I should say, of what this narrative is trying to be. And I look at it as a narrative because I haven't seen any of the science yet that's been proven. But Jake, do you have any comments on this as far as how they're treating this and the story that's come out on this? And have you heard any comments from people in the industry?
I haven't heard a whole lot, but as far it's just pushing the same agenda as always, right? Just like with Pavilion, for years it was the water's bad and it's all because the oil and gas companies, and spent millions and millions of dollars. I think DEQ spent $1.2 million investigating this, and here it is. Turns out, well, actually, EPA was wrong. Now the state took over, and DEQ says, well, this is what really happened. They're saying that it's PVC particles in the first investigation is common in the when you go to it's a common. What am I looking for, Bailey? What did the report say?
No, it was
contaminant.
Yeah.
in their the lab that was originally hired to do it, and that's no one wants to see that when you're on the other side of the agenda, right? But I think it's something that we're going to continue to see, and it's not going to stop. It's pushing that agenda, right? It's all bad. We've all had this conversation multiple times.
It's the word, right? It develops a toxic taste in your mouth just on how it's been presented for so long, right?
The resonation with the audience you're pushing for.
Exactly. And I mean, I'm not going to say names, but I mean, like Pavilion, Wyoming, and this specific oil and gas company, they come in and they take care of this. I think it's 12 miles is this field alone, and they find themselves getting pushback from smaller people. I mean, when you start looking at a small town like that with a very large company, other things come to mind. I mean, are we getting the compensation we deserve? I mean, a lot of variables come to that and different feelings people have, which I think kind of started this whole conversation. I think the whole thing actually started in 2008 when they felt that it had a weird tinge/taste to it as well as a smell. And then this whole thing took off from there.
Well, the funniest part, I was talking with my cousin. He worked for that company when this all happened, and he worked for the small company that operated the field before it was bought out, and it was never an issue. And then his opinion on that particular one was that it all came down to the surface rights. Is that then the big company came in and a few people got upset about not getting their extra slice of the pie when the big dogs came in, and that's where it all started from, and it escalated from there. But the radioactive oil, where are they claiming this is coming from? I have to do the search on that.
Well, and that's where I was looking at this. Is I haven't completely read the Rolling Stone story, and I feel like I'm a little bit out of sorts by saying that, because I skimmed it and I didn't see like any links to any studies or anything along those lines, and so I have to go back and revisit that story. But I did look at the one from the Texas Standard, which came out a day or two later after the Rolling Stone story. And I'd like to know your guys' opinion on this, because the Texas Standard is pretty much like an NPR or a PBS of Texas. They're a public,
Right.
yeah, they're like a public, communication entity. So they're supposed to be neutral. They're supposed to be, that sort of thing. They always have the label, if you're in the public communications, that you're a left-leaning liberal type of a thing, and whether that's true or not is irrelevant, but that's usually the label. This story certainly makes it seem like it's true, because just by the way, Texas Standard, the national daily news show of Texas, okay? And the headline, just to me, is so loaded that if you read the headline alone, you don't even want to read the story. Like, you don't want your day to go any more depressed, because the hidden danger of radioactive oil and gas wastewater. I mean, it's got the word hidden in there. It's got the word danger in there. It's got Fukushima radioactive, Chernobyl in there. It's got everything you could possibly need in there. So when what bothers me here is when public dollars, and I'm sure that they've gotten some support from an oil and gas company at the Texas Standard. Trust me, if they're like an NPR, they're getting support from energy companies. This is starting to happen more and more, is what I'm getting at. People in the industry the people they've been supporting over the last 5 years seem to be really turning on them right now. Anyway, that's all. That's my long question, statement, diatribe.
Let me shoot from the hip here, Jason, because, obviously, I've spent my whole career in oil and gas. I try to say oil and gas industry because there's not really an oil and gas section, and Jake has pretty much as well. And I'm guessing, and just correct me if I'm wrong since I haven't read the article, but I will right when I get off the phone with you because this is intriguing. I'm assuming it's making people sick, or it's whatever it is they're trying to justify in the terms of that, I would have to guess. Is that what I'm taking?
Well, all I know is from the Texas Standard one that I was reading. Okay, like I said, I skimmed the Rolling Stone one talking about the looking for the actual study itself, because I don't like to read what the politicians read. I like to read what the scientists read. I don't get into the briefs. I like to read the step further and actually look at the data. Yeah. But when I looked at the Texas Standard one, they tried to do the local story in Texas, this and that, and so. Let me read a couple quotes here from the story of the Texas Standard, where we don't know if this is connected to radioactivity, he says, but it would be fantastic if certain health agencies would start examining this issue. And so that right there says there's no story.
Right.
That says there's story. And so the rest of everything leading up to it, there's no story. So there's no reason to go to print. There's no reason to put this out there. But what this is doing is it allows activists, it allows people that are on the same page as this narrative to now email it to the politicians and representatives and say, see, look at this guy. When he was cornered by a by a reporter, and the reporter wanted an ethical answer, the guy said, well, yeah, of course, let's be transparent. So that to me is what's happening here, is that people, just average people now, are getting caught up in gotcha stuff, and then it's being used against them. Anyway, can you tell I get passionate about this?
That was very passionate. I liked it. I was all about it. Everything's bigger in Texas. Maybe that's why you got so compassionate.
Another thing, what doesn't have radioactivity in it anymore? Your
It's true.
If you like to go shooting your guns, you're getting a little bit of radioactivity every time you pull the trigger. Every time you heat up a burrito in the microwave, you're getting radioactivity. There's so much out there that and the fact that they can't point to a study. And I'm actually skimming the Rolling Stone article right now. It's I don't see any kind of studies in there. I see them referencing some EPA regulations and stuff like that, but where is the factual basis behind it? And it's because it's just all pushing the agenda. It's not going to stop. It continues to go, and that's why we got to stay proactive in combating this. And you know what? If there's a problem, let's deal with that problem. Absolutely, but throwing accusations without anything to back up where you're coming from doesn't make much sense to me at all.
So I emailed a colleague of mine. Actually, he's a regular on the program, and we did it off the record because I didn't want to get his name muddied up in it and that sort of thing. He likes to keep a clean profile, but I sent him the Texas Standard article that is titled "The Hidden Danger of Radioactive Oil and Gas Wastewater," and I said, "You see, this is an example of using an article from a popular publication like the Rolling Stone, allowing your local news stories to do a story based on that, which is all based on loose science. But what it's doing is it's allowing the shift all of a sudden to become not an energy debate, but a public health debate, which worked in Colorado. That's what I'm seeing, and that's what's really bothering me. So I want to ask your guys' opinion on that. Do you think this is turning into a public health debate, or am I just a chicken little right here?
Nope, you're dead on. I actually had a conversation with Jack Hamlin, and I know you've had him on the podcast. He's, I want to say, the president of Summit Engineering, and he was talking to me as well on the basis of Wyoming and how we're starting to see the same transition that they saw in Colorado with the Prop 19182 and all the issues they're fighting. And he said, quote unquote, that we need to be even more proactive than we already are, because he already saw the first two things that Wyoming has done are the first two things that Colorado did before they're in the current situation they are now. So everybody's transitioning into this. It's one of them classic things like, here's a good comparison. So everything comes back to water a lot of times, right? I mean, water it's most of the planet. In the state of Wyoming, as of, I want to say it was 2008, they changed the laws to where a landowner, these old ranch folk, that an old windmill, that pumps water for their cattle, they can't legally repair that windmill. They have to get certified, which I found absolutely crazy because they own the land and everything on it. They can tell a sheriff or somebody of the sorts to get off their property, but they can't make sure to maintain anything on it. Which I found utterly crazy, but they're running out of things to combat and chase. I mean, they've got to get creative, which I support a lot of it when they justify it, but a lot of times it's like you said, you're not ridiculous. It's exactly what they're doing. And just to circle back to the fact that you stated, the oil and gas guys were probably involved financially with a lot of this stuff. I mean, it happens all the time, just like we were talking about Pavilion. That oil and gas company, they say they may have caused all this, but nobody notates that they paid out over $1.5 million initially just to do the test to ensure that it wasn't a problem. That wasn't a big highlight.
And the lawsuits that they paid that probably shouldn't have had to pay, but they paid it just to keep the peace with the community. I think that it's going to continue, and like Jack said at the mixer the other day.
Yeah, it was actually the Powder River Rising. You missed out, by the way, Jason. It was a good time.
And he said we're already way behind because all these activist groups, they've been working on this for 20, 30 years, and oil and gas really just stayed in limbo and kept moving forward and working until the last, say, 10 years when it's really exploded. Yeah, or less, and now people are starting to get active, but like we said, we are way behind compared to everything that they've been doing for the last 30 years to try and put an end to our industry.
So Jake, what's the answer there? Because, it's the same message I was saying last summer at the Energy Expo in Gillette, Wyoming, talking about, I got daggers stared through me at a panel because I brought this up this summer. Said, I don't know what's going on, but we're not connecting. The average person thinks that energy comes from the light switch and the circuit breaker, not from, an actual energy source, like whether it be oil and gas or coal or wherever. They just assume it comes from the light switch. Then we start to see some of these groups and some of these activists and that sort of thing happen. And then we turn around and Colorado, Broomfield's putting out a new one, Colorado Rising, and now New Mexico's even having some signs that they're looking at putting some restrictions on the oil and gas industry. By the way, a third of their state budget comes from oil and gas, and the governor is, better be careful there how they proceed on that one. But you know what I mean? How can we get mobilized? Because I want to see the industry stick around and not self-implode.
Well, I think first of all, the most important thing is to you got to destroy the argument with facts. And if there's an issue and it's brought up, well, that's great. Let's talk about the facts. How are we going to get to whether, if this is truly an issue, let's look at the facts. How are we going to fix it? But to get mobilized, I've told you before, I think that it starts with the education. Just like your story of moving to North Dakota, wanting to protest, and wow, I actually like this industry, and look at the good things they're doing, and look at you now. I think it's going to start with education, whether it be with kids or young kids getting into college, and they're getting told what their liberal arts professors telling them, and that's not necessarily true. It's just because they're typically, not everyone, but a lot of them are very left leaning, and they're preaching this agenda. And so I think that as long as everyone stays active and out in the industry and in the spotlight, let it be shown that we're not afraid to say this is what we stand for. And again, like I've said many times with you, even on the last time we talked, it all comes down to facts are always going to overcome the agenda, because if the agenda doesn't have facts and it just has feeling, facts will always win. And to stay mobilized, it's going to be in the education, getting out there, teaching these young folks exactly what's going on here, and there's more to the story. This is if you think about it of a Earth type situation, that what's out there in the news and the agenda, that's just the crust. We still got the mantle and the core to talk about.
That's true. Head on.
Bailey, Midkiff, Jake Milne with us, WIC. We're talking about just some recent news, primarily about the Rolling Stone article about radioactive wastewater in the energy industry and how that seems to be a ongoing narrative. I'm looking at the 2020 election. I was talking to Kathleen Skama from the Western Energy Alliance earlier, and she, of course, does most things at a national level, dealing with a lot of the lobbying down in D.C., but she lives in Denver, so she's quite aware of what's going on in Colorado and quite aware of what's going on in Wyoming and New Mexico, to the tune to where she actually referenced it in her her national talk, if you will. Do you guys see this being used on a national level to the degree it certainly is right now? I mean, last summer when I was speaking in Gillette, I spoke on how, guys, we got to wake up here because 2 presidential candidates are having an open discussion about banning our industry. Now we got 6 candidates, and it seems like it's being done not only from a bottom up, but a top down as well. It just seems really well orchestrated. So to, I guess, validate Jack's point too, they are really well organized, but I think it's coming from both sides, if you know what I mean. Do you guys see that? I mean, because you guys are not in the industry, but you are in the industry. So you've got kind of one foot in and one foot out so you can see what's going on, but also hear what's going outside of there too. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. It does. And I mean, it is, and it's going to get worse. I mean, it's a hot topic right now that's got a lot of traction on their behalf as well as ours. And I think we've just saw the tip of the iceberg. I think it's really going to expand. It's going to be a huge discussion. And I mean, it's all fine and dandy to have one, KISS method answer for them to be like, let's shut it down, and for us to say, let's keep it going. But I mean, there's so many variables at play when we start talking about these things. I don't think in their discussion they touch that. Okay, so you want that, and you're going to tell us why, but you're not going to explain, the fix to do that. I mean, it's not something you can just halt. It's like you said, okay, yeah, so you turn on your light switch. You love that. You love all the items that you have. I mean, your iWatch, your phone, whatever the case may be. But yeah, what's the compensation if you're going to go this route? I mean, it's wild. Wild.
Yeah, it's going to continue. That's for sure. I think it's going to be a huge focus once the Democratic primary is over. I think that's going to be a huge focus and a good bat for bludgeoning the president sitting in office. I mean, they're going to push for that, and it's funny how much they talk about it up there, beating each other up on stage. And I like to watch both sides of it just to get an idea of what's going on. I've watched a couple of the Democratic debates. Most of the time I end up shutting them off, but it's funny to watch how they can honestly sit up there and say that we're going to end this industry. And
that's very educated people too. It's just mind-blowing.
Yeah, you think that they would understand that it's not going to happen that way.
Well, and that's really what's so maddening about this is that these are educated people. These are people with doctorates, and to stand up on a stage and recite the platitudes to the level that they're reciting is quite dangerous. I mean, to me, it's akin to going into a crowded theater and shouting fire. I mean, I was taught in the media we have certain responsibilities, that there's a certain amount of public trust that we have to have within an ethics guideline and et cetera. I would think that some politicians would also have that because, well, Bailey, you're somewhat familiar with the political realm. I mean, you know that it's very dangerous to get up there and start citing platitudes that are just outright dangerous. I mean, it's one thing to say, hey, let's try to solve the homeless problem. Everybody knows that's not going to happen. But you know what? We're going to try our best, and you know what? Until everybody's got a roof over their head, we're not going to stop. And I get that whole thing is completely different than, hey, let's just end an industry that creates the jobs and is what 96% of our livelihood is based on and our everyday life. And it's just a new level of platitudes. So to kind of summarize and really validate what you two are talking about, I do think there is more than enough evidence to say the 2020 election is going to be the year of platitudes versus realities, because Trump now has 4 years to say, this is my reality. This is what I've done for the last 4 years. Here's what the media headlines have said I've done, but this is what I've actually done. So you can vote for me or you can vote for Fantasyland over there. I'm telling you, that's how it's going to go.
Right. It's just dangerous. I mean, you nailed it. Some of the things that they're stating that they want to do or their agenda, you can't take those things back. They've publicly said it. It's there. And that's, as career politicians, that's crazy for me to think that they would take that approach. But they did.
Humans love stories. We love the car crash. We love the drama. Go to a dinner party sometime and say, life's fine. World's going great. Nobody will talk to you. In fact, they probably even get upset at you and say, how could you say something so lukewarm? Come on, something's got... So, I mean, I look at it and I'm saying, you know what? The Democrats are pretty desperate right now to go to these lengths and to grab children and to use children to say, if you don't believe us, these children are going to die. I think that shows how desperate they are.
They're really reaching. There's no doubt about it.
Well, any final thoughts, guys? Any things we left out? We should probably mention what you guys do for a living out there. I mean, appreciate, you guys. See, you guys deal with so many companies that are out and around the industry that there are so many people in the industry they get lost for the trees in the forest, if you will. They get so sucked up in their day-to-day, they don't know what's going on in the outside world. So talk to people about what you guys do for a living and how you help out the industry.
Well, we are an industrial insulation company, but not only that, we're your specialties company. We do insulation, scaffolding, shoring, steam trace, heat trace, electric trace, any kind of trace you can think of. Steel buildings, supply, erection, asbestos abatement, lead abatement, sandblasting, coatings. We try to offer a turnkey option out there to take care of all those issues. And, we not only do everything in the oil side of things, but we also do it on the just power generation in general. And then dabble into the paper and pulp, breweries, food processing, all of those things that need this industry to keep them alive as well.
Just like the oil and gas, refineries, power plants, tank batteries. I mean, yeah, like you said, we got our foot in a little bit of everything, which is great because we hear various things out there. It keeps us on our toes.
Well, that's why I love talking to guys like you because, I mean, like I said, it's so easy to get caught up in your own day-to-day that, when you can go to the cafe and hear what's going on in different areas of town and different industry, that's kind of what it's like. People like to know that, what's going on in different areas and not only in different parts of the country, but different parts of industry as well, because the oil and gas industry is so tight and so connected, and the communities are that way, and they actually do have such a big responsibility that goes unsung because the light switch does need to come on. Hey, you know what? Those protesters need to protest, and without the energy industry and the oil and gas industry, they couldn't protest. That's how little respect they get. They don't even get respect from the people. Anyway, sorry. See, soapbox again.
That was nailed. And I'd like to add, we do a lot of podcasts with Jason. So.
All right. You guys, social media, the whole deal. So make sure people know how to get in touch with you and to socialize with you.
Yeah. Hey, one last thing before you let us go. Skimming through Rolling Stones, it looks like there is a 2015 study that they cited getting towards the bottom of it here, and they're blaming it on radon. And you know what? Radon's an issue everywhere. If there's uranium underground, there's radon. In fact, there's a big issue in Wyoming that we have to have vents in the bottom of our houses and have radon inspections when you buy or sell a house because the uranium's in the ground. So it's there whether we're drilling or not.
There's a little piece.
Yeah, I did see that as well, and I did kind of discount that for the same regard. In North Dakota, we've got radon and arsenic, and we've got problems on the western side of the state. That's why the dinosaurs are so well preserved on the western side of the state, and why the water tables are so bad, and we've had to invest millions and millions of dollars into a water treatment system out in western North Dakota, because it is. And that was long before that the shale revolution started. This has been a problem out there for a long time. So thank you for bringing that up, because I did make a mental note of that, but I did forget it. It was from I think Pennsylvania, was it, or University of Pennsylvania?
Yeah. Pennsylvania DQ or EPA. Pennsylvania EPA.
Yeah, and that study has been pretty much discontinued or questioned to the tune of, do you remember the show Gasland when that came out, where they took a lighter and put it underneath the faucet and lit the water on fire?
I recall that. I forgot about it. One of my favorite ones. I'm going to YouTube that.
Yeah, anyway, you can do that, and pretty much, well, not pretty much, but in a lot of rural areas you can do that. It has to do with the methane being built up from the well, and that's not, isolated to Shale Play USA. Again, that's been happening back. That's a parlor trick back in the 50s, for crying out loud. So I do that. That's what I mean. When I skimmed through it, I saw a lot of the science was kind of loose science and everything along those lines. Certainly not enough to call it definitive science to do an article like this that has already had the rippling effect, like we talked about earlier, the Texas Standard, and now, local newspapers are going out and they're interviewing all the oil and gas people and doing the, putting the county commissioners up against the wall based on this Rolling Stone article because, hey, if the Rolling Stone said it, it's good enough to go, right? So,
they picked a good magazine to put it in. There's no doubt about that.
Well, it's certainly one if you want to reach the progressive youth, you do that in SNL. I mean, those are the two leaders for the last 50 years. Still are, for the most part. Yeah, they're not the same that they used to be, but they're enough to get that kickstart going through social media and et cetera. Because, after this, they'll probably, there'll be SNL skits, and then there'll be, I don't know, professional wrestlers, and then there'll be probably, Fox will do something too. Who knows? Anyway, that's me again, just continuing on with my diatribe of verbal diarrhea here.
It was very informative, to say the least, Jason.
Sometimes, it just falls off the cart pretty quick. It's just, it's going so well, and then I just keep talking. Anyway.
It's all right. We hear you.
All right, gentlemen. Well, we'll talk again soon, okay?
Sounds good.